Hey, you. Have you ever heard those 6 letters uttered at you before? How did it make you feel in that moment? Or maybe you've been on the sending side of that same message. What was it that caused you to let those 2 words fly? Anger? Disrespect? Uncertainty? Maybe just a lack of confidence? And finally, what message do you think was sent in just those 2 short words? You know, you're not alone if a few introspective questions and a couple of seconds to think brings to mind more than one answer or emotion for you. While those interactions happen in a split second, they are packed with different factors that determine the way you perceive it, the emotions they evoke. And while a greeting may be said in mere seconds, the impact that it leaves, especially when repeated over time, lasts much longer. Hey, you. What if you're just bad with names? Some of you in here may identify that way. Perhaps you wonder if this even matters. I mean, sure, you can understand how, hey, you, isn't the most personal thing that you could be saying, but don't plenty of people get along just fine with nameless greetings all the time? Good morning. Hello there. Hey, how are you? I mean, what's wrong with that? The difference it would take to become good with names, is anyone going to notice that? Is it really worth the investment? I mean, for someone in your position, your sphere of influence, your walk of life, is it really that big of a deal if you forget one name from time to time? Well, I don't think the world is going to end simply for your sake of continuing to forget names. But I'm here to say that you can be better with names, and it will make a difference, both for you and for those whose names you come to learn. There is value in those names. And while nobody's perfect, while everybody's mind goes blank from time to time, I mean, really, we all do forget a name once in a while. There is value to be found in the effort you invest. Because the real value, it isn't in the names that you seek to learn. It's in the people those names belong to. So, you want to learn names. So do I. Where should we start? Well, a personal favorite of mine, and a real suggestion if you find yourself in a position of leadership, name tags. You know, I think it's fascinating, and I've noticed this in a variety of settings: school, church, work, the grocery store. Even if I am completely confident that I know someone's name, 100%, if I walk up to talk to them and I see that they're wearing a name tag, I will almost always glance at it, just briefly, before I talk to them. Not entirely sure why, but I think it has to do with giving myself just a little bit of that added boost of confidence. It's like, it's right there. Now I don't have to ask. I can use their name, and they won't even know I looked, depending on how good you are at looking quickly. It's pretty neat. But you know, I think sometimes it's that lack of confidence that prevents us from taking the next step and learning or using someone's name. Name tags can be a great way to help with that. Just ask your everyday grandpa at the grocery store. How does he always thank people by their name? He reads their name tag. Maybe the idea of learning the names of those around you sounds like a pretty daunting task. Maybe you feel there's just too many people for you to learn. You've gotten started too late in the journey. Or perhaps you feel like you're a leader in a position of power, and it would be too vulnerable, too tarnishing to your reputation if you started asking for people's names. If any of those sound like your train of thought, I would highly encourage you to consider starting something like a name tag day in the places that you do life. It's really simple. All you need is a box of name tags and some Sharpies. School, work, church, this can be anywhere, and get everyone involved. When everyone is involved, it eliminates most of the awkwardness for the day. It's obviously a great way to get to know people's names, involve interactions, and build relationships. But you can also learn a little bit about people from the way that they write their names. My dad, he's an all caps kind of guy, for example, and I think that's reflected in his personality. My wife, she's going to be a doctor. You can maybe imagine how hard her handwriting can be to read sometimes. All in good fun, though. All in good fun. So, name tags can be a simple fix, an easy way to learn. And when you're in a name tag-friendly place, or you've helped to create one for the day, it's an extremely easy solution to an extremely common problem. But what about the overwhelming majority of people that aren't wearing a name tag when we encounter them? After years of learning, working on this, some might call it researching, here's what I've got for you. It's okay to ask. Seriously, step right up, take a shot, and just ask someone their name. I know, it can be uncomfortable sometimes, even downright awkward. When I first came to college, I tried to avoid asking people too. I'd walk right up to them and I'd introduce myself instead. Hi, I'm Trey. That way, I didn't have to ask the question. The problem was, the response that I always got was, cool. And then I had to ask anyways. So save yourself the additional awkwardness and just step up and ask. You see, it's not just the name that you're learning when you ask someone what their name is. It's showing them. Soph, Jenny, Amelia, Jordan, that they matter. It's that intentionality that says, you are seen and you are valued. That's the kind of intentionality that makes an impact on those around you. And I think that's pretty cool. A quick story to demonstrate. My wife and I visited a medical school this last fall, and the dean of the college said he knew the names of every student who was attending there just 2 months into the school year. It's about 300 names. He even encouraged those of us attending the open house to challenge him on this and test him throughout the day as we would encounter students. Now, some people might say, that's just a gift of his, or maybe even, that's just a gimmick. He can't really do that. But I think he can, and I think it runs far deeper than that. His knowledge of names is a strong leadership trait, and it was visible, not just in his demeanor, but in the attitudes of the faculty and the students who we came in contact with throughout the day. Everyone knows in that culture of that school that they are seen and they are valued. And it was refreshing to interact with people who had such a joy and such a confidence in their occupation. My wife is thrilled now to be a part of that same medical school community in just a few months. As a leader, that dean's decision to act, to be intentional, and to act on the value that humans have led to an influence that positively impacted his organization. In short, his effort impacted his environment. I think sometimes it could be argued that leaders have the greatest responsibility to learn names. I mean, they're directing people, they're in charge of things, they're hiring, they should get to know names. And so maybe we come to expect stories like that from those who we think lead well. But I would challenge that thought with the idea that you can impact people right where you are, no matter what position you may hold. Learning people's names and asking them how they are called is a great way to begin showing them, that you value the people around you. So, we want to start getting better at learning people's names. How are we going to do that? One of the main things that I do is I use a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. Simple, right? Seems too easy. But sometimes slowing down and writing those names helps me to understand, helps me to process someone's name. Currently, I work as an admissions counselor at a college. I interact with lots of prospective students and their families every day. As a former student on this college campus, I used to have the joy of getting to interact face-to-face with the people whose names I was trying to learn on a daily basis. Now, in my current role, I don't have that opportunity as much. It's still not a position of leadership, it's one of relationship, hospitality, and customer service. But my primary interactions with prospective students and their family occur over phone calls, emails, and texts. This makes the interactions that I may have with them just once or twice all the more important to me that I have their name down. When my goal is to develop relationships, whether in school or at work, it makes sense that learning names would be a part of that. I understand that that may not feel relatable to you. That might not sound like your season of life or your personality. Maybe you're still in school, but you stick pretty tight to your friend group. Maybe you feel like you don't interact with the people around you very much on a day-to-day basis. Perhaps you feel like you do interact and you serve lots of people, but you receive very little feedback or thanks or valuable interaction. Maybe you feel like an average person in an average place. No matter where you find yourself at right now, I'd like to challenge you to think of 3 or 4 faces that you come in contact with on a regular basis. You don't have to know their names, just recognize them, that you see them frequently. Family, friends, coworkers, those of you in attendance, take a look at the person next to you. See who's here with you today. Now, with a name or face or 3 or 4 in mind, I'm here to tell you that every single one of those people that you have in your mind is valuable. And one of the greatest ways, the most impactful ways you can show them that you believe, is to begin learning their names. It's so impactful, in fact, that a 2006 study by Carmody and Lewis suggested that the sound of one's own name triggered unique responses in the brain in several regions. A flurry of studies and researches later, over the past 15 years, and it has been confirmed that hearing your own name triggers a unique response in the brain, in the frontal middle cortex and in other regions that have to do with self-identification. Said otherwise, saying someone's name to them or asking them to tell you their name develops feelings of self-identity and of value that no other stimulus can create. I think that's pretty cool. So, maybe you want to start getting better at learning names too. Where could we start? Like I mentioned, one of the first tips I would suggest is by writing things down, a pen and paper. At work, I write down a lot of names that help me remember a contact I had, a conversation we had, or a list of people that I need to reach out to. When I was at school, I would make lists too, usually of people that I wanted to get in touch with. I don't think I ever actually met with everyone that was on those lists, but writing their name down time and time again as I'd create the list allowed me to at least greet them by name each time that I saw them in person. And while we may have never sat down for coffee, I'd like to think that that intentional greeting, that repeated greeting, had a value of a different kind throughout the years. My second piece of advice may sound a little backwards, but it's putting a name to a face. Sure, we've all heard of putting a face to a name, and if you've heard of someone, the first time you meet them in person, that's fantastic. But I think a lot of times we become complacent and we stop there. In our social circles, we begin to be comfortable recognizing someone's face, acknowledging that they're there, and never taking that next step to learn or to ask their name. Whether you never learned it in the first place, or you learned it and then maybe forgot it along the way, I can't encourage you enough. Ask. Just ask them their name. Rarely are you going to find someone that becomes upset or offended because of that. And it is such an incredible way to show them that you see them and you think they have value. Finally, association. Our brains are wired to associate things. So when you learn the name of someone new, try and associate that with a place, an object, a memory, maybe a word that rhymes, or even your friend who had that name first. Because our brains are wired to associate, if you can connect their name with anything in your head, you just might stand a chance to remember that name a little better. I hope you just might be catching a theme and a pattern here throughout this as well. There's no magic bullet to learning people's names. There's no secret. It's not only for the people who seem good at it. It's not a natural talent. The one thing that is connecting all of these is one ingredient, and that's effort. Effort is what it takes to learn people's names. And I hope that that's encouraging to you, not a discouragement, because ultimately, it's not about going from bad with names to a 100% name memorization rate. That's not the goal. What will set you apart and what will make a difference is when you step forward and you take that intentionality and you say, I see you, I value you, and I'd like to know your name. You may not ever pronounce the name of one of your friends perfectly every time. You may be friends with twins and sometimes call them by the wrong name after you've gotten to learn them both. But you see, it's not about being perfect. It's about the intentionality. It's about taking the effort to say, you have value, and I'm here to learn and respect that. So go ahead, learn names, ask names, and repeat them. And I think as you do that, if you choose to embark on that endeavor, you just might be surprised by the impact that you can have on your environment. Thank you.